I knew that this movie was gonna be good just from the trailers, but wow.
Godzilla Minus が
So I found out about this movie at a really funny time, actually, right before we watched Godzilla for my film history class. So I saw the trailer for this, was super hyped, and then found out we were watching Godzilla, and I was like, oh my god, Godzilla. And that first Godzilla movie, the one that came out in 1954, was good. Don't get me wrong, that's a really good movie, a great movie, a historically great movie. But it was trying to tell a story that was just really hard to tell just with the technology they had at the time. And now you are telling a Godzilla story with modern technology, but still on a really small budget. This movie was made for $15 million. I mean, we talk about The Creator, which came out a couple of months ago, looking great on its $80 million budget. You could have made 5 of these for one creator. Obviously, let's address the Godzilla in the room first, you know. Godzilla was done really well. Unlike how he's portrayed as this hero in the legendary Godzilla verse, here he's just a terrifying monster. And even though he is smaller than he's typically portrayed, honestly, I didn't notice because he was just so menacing to the point where you couldn't really tell because he was doing more damage than I've really ever seen a Godzilla do before. He was just scarier than I've ever seen Godzilla be before. So let's just talk about the actual plot of this film. It mostly follows a character named Koichi as he deals with, you know, having been a Japanese military descender, essentially. You know, he was supposed to go into a battle and he fled. So he's dealing with the guilt of this, and then comes across Noriko, who is this woman where her family was killed by the fire bombings, and she has this baby, Akiko, and Akiko's parents were killed during the fire bombings. So the war brought these 3 together, and even though none of them were related, they create this family, and I found it just so well written. I mean, like, the writing here was great. The way that they just developed all of these characters and developed this family, you know, was wonderful. And there's also this friend group that Koichi is a part of, and that friend group was also really well done. I found the human characters here to really make this movie better, which you just can't say at all about any of the American Godzilla movies. That's what they're doing wrong. They just don't have good characters. But since watching this film, there's one aspect in particular that I really have not been able to get out of my head, and that is the score. The score in this film is just monstrous, you know, just it reuses certain bits from the first Godzilla film, but also there's new elements to it as well, and just every part of the score here just works so cohesively and enhances the film tremendously. The score is able to make the human scenes of this film feel as big as the Godzilla ones in how important they are, you know, and that's helped by the writing, of course. The writing here is fantastic. This is probably the best written Godzilla film I've watched. Now, keep in mind the only Godzilla films I have seen are this one, the 1954 one, and then all the legendary Godzilla movies. I have not seen Shin Godzilla, which is a film that I definitely need to see. But yeah, I haven't seen a lot of Godzilla. But of those, the writing here just is so much better, even than the 1954 one. And finally, you know, this film is just a grand spectacle. You know, the visual effects are great. I really didn't notice much wrong with the visual effects throughout this film, which is crazy because of, like I said, a $15 million budget. but also just the way it's shot. The cinematography is really good, and I was in a theater that was big, but not that big, and there were certain times where I was just in there wishing I was at home where I could have seen this film in IMAX, but sadly, we don't have an IMAX theater in Ithaca, New York. So, oh well, it is what it is. I'm just really glad I saw it, and I really hope that all of you watching, if you plan on seeing this movie and you haven't already, definitely try to see it on the biggest screen possible, Dolby or IMAX. I think both of those would be fantastic for this film. And if you don't have a Dolby or IMAX near you, just in a theater, just so that way you can see it on that big screen and really be able to take in all this movie is trying to show you. Going into this film, I was expecting a good Godzilla movie, and what I got instead was just a great movie, period, and one of my favorite movies of this year. And for that, it gets 4.5 stars. But what about all of you? Have you seen Godzilla Minus One yet? If you have, please let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And while you're down there, please feel free to like and subscribe. This is a very small channel that I am very passionate about, and I would love to have your support. I find it really funny because I have a podcast, Popcorn Premieres, and on that podcast I was talking about the Thanksgiving break and how those 2 weekends I was fairly disappointed by the films that came out and just how none of them were really that great. And then this weekend came around and all 3 of the films that came out and I saw were better than all of those movies from the 2 Thanksgiving weekends. And I can't wait for the next final few weekends of the year to roll around because the films coming out just look incredible, and I can't wait to share that excitement with all of you. And if you want to check out my podcast, it is linked in the description below. We will have a new episode talking more in depth about May December Dream Scenario and this movie, Godzilla Minus One, coming out this upcoming Friday. It is also our final episode of the semester, so I would love for you to check it out. Thank you all for tuning in, and I will see you all in the next movie review. Take care.